Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone as we, Baruch Hashem, are getting ready for Shabbat Kodesh. I think for this week, at least I can say, Shabbat coming very, very quickly. And we're Zaycha this week to be learning and to be reading in the shul Parshat Korach. One of these Parshiot that are very famous, Korach. Korach is fighting to take Moshe Rabbeinu's job, Aaron HaKohen's job. He feels that he was slighted. He should become the Kohen Gadol. Why is Aaron the Kohen Gadol? And Korach is fighting for it. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, Tzaddik Libracha, was coming to the Bet Midrash one day, and he sees a lot of poor people lined up outside. So he tells the poor people, why are you guys all lined up here? And they said, inside the Bet Midrash, there's a rich man and he's learning. And we're waiting for him to finish learning so we can ask him for tzedakah. Rabbi Yehuda Levi walks into the Bet Midrash. He sees the rich man and he tells the rich man, you're a deserter from the army. And the man says, I was never in the army. How could I desert? How can I leave my position in the army if I never was in the army? And Yehuda Halevi tells him, no, you're someone who left. You're someone who left the army. He says, I'll tell you why. We are all in the army of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're all in the army of Hashem, and Hashem gave us each one our own job. And you have a job as a wealthy man. Hashem entrusted you with the money to give it to Aniyim, to give it to the poor people. And you, instead of giving it to the poor people, are sitting inside and learning Torah. You are not doing your job. Yes, you have to learn Torah, but you also have to make sure that all the poor people have the money. You see, when you have a job, you have to do your job. You cannot skip jobs. You cannot change jobs. Rabbi David Sutton here, he brings from the Sefer Kiata Imadi, a story of a bus driver in Israel. He finally became a bus driver. He took lessons. He got the job. He was very excited. He gets on the bus route, and he sees that his route is very, very few people coming on the bus. A bunch of old ladies going to the therapist and back. And he says, I didn't sign up to be a bus driver. I want excitement. So he looks around Jerusalem and he sees that the bus that goes to the Kotel is the most busiest bus. Everybody's coming and going. So the next morning, instead of going to his route that he was assigned to, he decided to go on the Kotel route. At the end of the day, he gets back and he has, and he has a whole stack of tickets that he sold. So the person in charge says, where'd you get all these tickets from? So he says, I'll tell you the truth. I got bored of my route, so I went to the Jerusalem Kotel route. And the guy says, what'd you do? Everybody has a route. Every bus line is important. One bus line may have more than other people getting on, but the poor people, the old ladies, the old men who need to go to the therapist, that was the bus they used. You didn't go there. Now they weren't able to get there. Sometimes we feel like, I'm not having the best job. Or, I'm not having all the limelight. I'm not insta-famous, unfamous, and this and that. I want to have more attention. I want people more to listen to me, look at me. But that's not the way it works. Hashem gives everybody their job. You have to do your job. If you're going to desert your job and you're going to go to something else, you become a deserter. Like you left the army without permission. Because you were in Hashem's army. And famously, everybody knows the story of Itzhak Perlman. Right, the story of Itzhak Perlman. Itzhak Perlman was a famous violinist. He also was very handicapped. And one day he was performing. And he was performing with the violin. Beautiful, beautiful piece. In the middle of the performance, one of the strings of the violin ripped. And now everyone thought he's going to put on his braces, put on his crutches, and he's going to walk to the other side and get a new violin. But instead of doing that, Itzhak Perlman continued to play the song using the remaining strings of the violin. And after he finished, which was a beautiful rendition of the song that he was playing, everyone got up and were clapping, and they asked him, how did you manage to do that? Why didn't you get up and get a new violin? And he said, sometimes it's the artist's task to find out how much music you can make with what you have left. Same thing in our lives. Every one of us has a job. Your job is to do the best you can with your job, with your station in life. Obviously, you should always want to move up in life and stuff like that, but you don't try to take someone else's job. You have your job, and you have to do it the best. And if you do it good, then Hashem will promote you to the level that you're supposed to be at. A man once came to Hashem Zaman Orbach, very handicapped. And he told him, I live 2 blocks away from the shul, but it takes me 45 minutes to get to shul, to walk. Am I patur? Am I free not to come to shul? Or am I obligated to come to shul? And the rabbi said, you're patur. You're handicapped. 45 minutes, it's a lot of strength, it's a lot of, you don't have to come to shul. And now he asks Rav Shlomo Zalman. He says, is this a kula? Are you giving me a leniency that I don't have to come to shul? Or that's the halakha? So Rav Shlomo Zalman said, someone who's handicapped is patur from going to shul. You don't have to go to shul. So the man says to Rav Shlomo Zalman, with all respect, I'm not handicapped. It just takes me longer to walk than other people. You know, the way you look at yourself. Instead of thinking that I'm handicapped, I can't walk, I'm not handicapped. It just takes me a little longer to do something. And he himself would walk to the shul. He wanted to be there. You have a job. No, whatever your job is, or however you are, whatever talents you were given, even if you feel you might be handicapped in certain things, you have to do it the best you can do it with what you have. It's interesting. One of the brachot that we read every morning is the bracha, Sha'asar li kol tzorki. That means Hashem made everything that I needed. When do we say this? Or what is it related to? To putting on shoes. Putting on shoes, that's why some people have a custom not to say this bracha on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Right? Chamuvadia and the Al-Qadr Yosef, they say that we do say, Sfaradim do say this bracha even on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So we do say it. But this is the bracha of Sha'asar li kol tzorki is associated with putting on shoes. Why? What is shoes? Sha'asar li kol tzorki means Hashem made everything for me. What does it do with shoes? So, here he says a story, and I'll say a personal story afterwards. There was a teacher who did an exercise with their 3rd grade class. She told all the class, take off all your shoes and put them in the middle of the room. Then she told everyone, grab any 2 shoes and put them on. You can just imagine what happened. No one's shoes fit. You think grab 2 random 3rd grader shoes. Everyone's feet are a little different. The teacher told them that that's exactly what it is in life as well. Just like someone else's shoes might look nice, but they don't fit on you. They're not your size. You're not your fit. They're not your comfort level. The same thing is in life. Everybody's mission is different. Sha'asar li kol tzorki. Hashem gave you exactly what you need to walk in your own shoes to do what you need to do. The personal story I like to share, this is a true story that happened with me. When I first moved here to Bayswater, to Farakwe over here, I used to still be called to Or Natan in Regal Park for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So one Rosh Hashanah, as I was leaving, I didn't realize, I got in the car, I was already halfway, I was already on the Van Wyck towards Regal Park. I looked down and I realized I'm wearing my slippers. I didn't take my shoes. I didn't take my holiday, my Shabbat shoes. I didn't take them. So here I am in slippers. So I have some family in Regal Park. So I call my brother-in-law, I call my nephew. I say, you have shoe size, whatever shoe size I am. And they don't have the exact size, but they have either bigger or less or whatever it is. So I say, okay, I'll take it. What am I going to do? How can I go to shul on Rosh Hashanah wearing slippers? It's not Yom Kippur. It's not Tisha B'Av. So I went and I took the shoes. I'll tell you, it was very painful. It was a smaller size. It looked nice, but I couldn't put my shoes in. And I had my feet inside. I would wear it for a little bit. And to be a Hazan, it was very hard to stand and wear someone else's shoes. I had to kind of let it out from the back or whatever like that to make it happen. Everybody's shoes are different. Everybody's shoes are exactly for them. Hashem gives you exactly what you need to do your job. We're not to do someone else's job. And that was one of the mistakes Korach did. He was looking at someone else's job. We never look at someone else's job. We look, how are we doing our job? And if we're doing our job well, The Steipler Gaon says, had Korach waited, Hashem would have given something even better for him. But his mistake, he was grabbing someone else's job. Rabotai, we know that Korach's children did not die. They made tshuva at the last moment. It's interesting, we say in the Tehillim, Tzadik Katamar Yifrach. What is the Safei Tevot? Safei Tevot, the last letters of each of those words, spell Korach. Tzadik Katamar Yifrach means that a righteous person blooms like a palm tree. Korach is a righteous person. I'll prove it to you. The fact that his children made tshuva, that means Korach was a great man. Because your children, remember, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. The fact that Korach's children made tshuva, that means they grew up in a house where it was a good house. No, Korach made a mistake, and he went with his mistake. Sometimes people go with their mistake. They don't realize it. But the fact that the children make tshuva, that means that the father did something right. You know, a lot of times I tell people, especially now, that they say they're people, especially in our community, they go down and learn yeshivot and they become big rabbanim, and they forget about their ancestors or their parents. They think they became the next level. And I always like to remind them, if it wasn't for your father or your grandfather, your grandmothers who used to cry when she would light the candles that her children would remain Jewish or they come closer to Torah, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's all connected. The fact that Korach's children were able to do tshuva shows the greatness of Korach. Fact is, Pirkei Avot tells us that what's an example of a machloket that's not l'shem shamayim, it's not for heaven's sake? It's Korach and his congregation. They were not for sake of heaven. But you know, what type of examples does the Mishnah give? The Mishnah gives an example that just crosses the line. Like, Korach was right in what he was doing, and he was right for what he wanted to achieve. But he went just a little bit too much. And so the Mishnah tells us that was a machloket that's not l'shem shamayim. So it wasn't like it was the worst machloket holding at the side. No, it wasn't holding. It was right at the border of a machloket being for good or machloket being for bad. It was right there, and it moved a little bit to the bad side, and he got in trouble. But the truth is, Korach was a great man. The fact that his children made tshuva. The truth is that our parents, grandparents, have a very big effect on future generations. There's a story they tell over here in the Pninim al Torah that there was a young man by the name of Dan, and he was leaving shul Friday night, and he looked around to see if anyone needed a place to eat. And he sees a young Sephardic Jew, and he says to him, Shabbat Shalom, my name is Dan. Do you need a place to eat? And the man says, yes. He says, what's his name? He says, what's your name? He says, my name is Machi. He says, okay, come, join. Brings him home. They sing Shalom Aleichem. They say Kiddush. They eat the bread. They start eating the meal. And after some Divrei Torah, he tells Machi, is there any song you want to hear in specific? Any song we can sing on the Shabbat table? And Machi says, you know, there was one song we sang in shul that I loved so much. Can you sing it again? He says, what song? He says, L'cha Dodi. In the shul, you sang L'cha Dodi? He says, sing L'cha Dodi. So they sing L'cha Dodi. No, they continue the meal. A little while later, he says, any other song you have in mind? L'cha Dodi. Turned out that meal, they sang L'cha Dodi 9 times. So, at this time, Dan is getting a little bit confused. So, L'cha Dodi, you don't usually sing as a Friday night song. You sing it in shul, and that's it. You don't sing it at the meal. So he says to Dan, listen, you got to tell me your story. Why do you like this L'cha Dodi song so much? He says, the truth is, I don't know why I like the song, but I like it. He says, but what's your story? Where are you from? What? He says, the truth is, he says to his host, he says, I come from the city of Ramallah. Yes, the large Arab city on the West Bank. And my name is not Machi, but it's Mahmoud. My name is Mahmoud Ibn Es Sharif. He says, but the truth is, I'm a Jew. I'll explain. I didn't know I was Jewish. And I was growing up in the Arab town, and whenever the subject of Jews came up, I always used to say, let's be nice to them. Let's help them out. Let's work it out with them. We'll figure it out. It'll be good for us. It'll be good for them. And I always got shot down, and my father got so upset at me. My father got so upset at me that he threw me out of the house. And so I snuck back in, and I took my stuff, and I was going to run away. And I said, I'm going to go to Israel. And as I was packing my things, my mother finds me, and my mother says, she says, Mahmoud, you should know that if you're going to go live with the Jews, you don't have to convert. You are Jewish. I made a huge mistake, and I'm paying for it now. But I'm Jewish, and you're Jewish. And she goes to her room and takes out the Israeli IDs and birth certificate for him, that he's a complete Jew. And she gives it to him. And she says, here also is a picture of our family in front of one of the tombstones in Israel. And that is our family. And she gives it to him. And he says, I went with this and I've been traveling all over Israel. And I've been learning about my Jewish roots. And I'm becoming more and more religious. So his host says, can I please take a look at that picture that your mother gave you? And he pulls out the photo. And it's a grave. It's a picture of the family, of a Jewish Sephardic family, standing at a grave in an old cemetery in Tzfat. And right there on the tombstone is written, Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, the author of the Lecha Dodi. There's a connection there. Don said, Machi, there's a reason why you love Lecha Dodi so much. Your ancestor is the one who wrote it. Welcome home. But you see how far it goes? We think that, the world tries to make it that you're not connected to the past. We're so connected to the past, and what we do today affects the future tomorrow. And everything is connected. I will tell you, I want to end with one last lesson on this week's Parsha. We have that when the earth opened up, all of the Jews, they all started to cry, who were all around them fled from the cries, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up too. People who were not involved in the sin of Korach, when they heard the earth cracking up and they heard the sounds of the earth, they started to run away. Why did they start to run away? They didn't do the sin. There's a story told over by my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Saul Reisman Shlita, Yeshiva of Torah V'dat. He says that in the 1960s, the refuseniks in Russia, they started to learn more Torah. They started to refuse the communist government, and they were trying to remain Jewish. And so they opened up an underground yeshiva, and every night they had a class. And people would come and learn. And there was one Jew that came, a little bit older guy, and he would come, and he would sit there, but he could never learn, and he kept falling asleep. He kept falling asleep. And people really wanted to learn Torah. There was no Talmidei Chacham in Russia, very limited amount, right? Everyone had to flee, and whoever was left, KGB was watching you. And so some people who wanted to learn, they told this old guy, he said, listen, you're coming and you're sleeping. We can come and we can actually learn. Can you please not come so we can come instead? There's not enough space here. It's an underground yeshiva. There's not enough space to learn. And this old Russian guy says to them, I'm not going. I'm staying right here. They said, but why? He says, I'll explain it to you. He says, you should know, it was 1938. It was during the Stalinist purges, when they were getting rid of anyone who didn't like Stalin. And I was sitting in a cafe, and there was a group of young men sitting right next to me. And suddenly the NKVD, the People's Internal Affairs of Russia, the police, they came in and they took all these young men that were sitting right next to the table that I was sitting at, and they started beating them up and they arrested them. And they were taking them out. And then they saw me and they started beating me up. And I tell them I have nothing to do with them. I'm not with them. I pledge allegiance to Stalin. Whatever he wants, I'll do. I'm not with these people. They finally stopped. And one of these police guys, one of these NKVD says to him, I'll tell you why we're beating you up. You know why? We're beating you up because you were sitting too close to them. And when you sit close to someone, you become part of them. He tells those people, that's why I'm not leaving this yeshiva. You're right, I may not understand anything, but the fact that I'm here, that makes me a part of it. And that's why the people were running away from where the earth was cracking. Because they said, if we're going to be here, then we're going to be part of the problem. Yeah? You have to be very careful who your neighbor is. And very careful who your neighbors are and who your friends are. Because we definitely take from them, whether for good or for bad. So may HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us a zchut that it should only be for good. So to quickly review the 3 lessons that we learned from this week's Parsha. The first lesson being that do your job and do your job well. Don't look at someone else's job. You pay attention to you, and if you do your job correctly, Hashem will give you a promotion. The second lesson that we learned was that what our ancestors did have an effect on us, and what we do can have an effect on our future descendants. And therefore we must make sure to do the right thing. And the third and final lesson was that who we associate has a big deal to do with who we are. May we have a zchut to associate with the right people and uplift ourselves in our service to our Kadosh Baruch Hu. With this, I would love to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom.